Welcome to Prime Time. Ivan Showtime. I got my co-host Independent Thinker with me, and we have a very special guest in the studio with us. We're going to introduce you to our guest in a couple of minutes, but we want to take this time out and say happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. We know it's Thanksgiving, and we hope that everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving meal. And for some of you who, unfortunately, like myself, who didn't have KFC or Burger King or Wendy's, I'm still able to survive regardless to what. Independent Thinker! Top of the evening to you, man.
Good evening,
You're
good
kind of
evening.
quiet this evening. This ain't you.
Good evening, Showtime. Good evening, special guest.
Yeah, this ain't you, man. This ain't you. Boy, listen, this past week, a lot of things been going down, Independent Thinker. You know, originally, I wanted to talk about some things, but boy, I tell you, some other things came up, and I just can't let it pass by. And I heard the latest now. Of course, we know that the Deputy Prime Minister has sent in his resignation. That's one of the things. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the executive order being extended. I got some views I'm going to share with you all as it relates to that. And, of course, our special guest, who is now the servant leader of the Bahamas Constitutional Party. We want to say a special good evening to you, Ms. McIntosh, and welcome to Prime Time.
Good.
Ivan Showtime and Independent Thinker. How you doing?
Good evening. It's good to be here with you. Very intelligent, mature gentleman. I'll put it like that.
Thank you. It's good to be in your company, man. I listened to you on the radio, even back in the day of sports radio back in the day.
Oh yeah, I used to be there quite a lot.
Let me tell you something. One thing I can say about you, you speak truth to power, and that's one thing I respect about you. Now, wasn't really about your political views. It was about what's right and what's wrong, and that's what impressed me about you so much. So I know you got a lot of things you want to talk about. Of course, we listened to Joan Sawyer, and how she felt about this situation pertaining to the extension of the
Emergency order.
emergency order. And listening to her, I think she opened a lot of eyes, man. Because I really didn't. I mean, I haven't studied the Constitution like that, and I got to give her props for even being that deep into the Constitution. Because somebody who had to been into the Constitution to know exactly what the plans were. But I knew all along it wasn't a good thing, because I said, looking at it, they always talk about this. They always talk about data. Watch the data. Watch the amount of cases that we have and all that. If the cases are going down like that, it has to be a reason as to why you want to extend this executive order. I see Independence looking at me. Independent Thinker, you can join the conversation.
Yeah, listen.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was saying, good evening, Bahamas again, and good evening, special guest, servant leader of the Constitutional Party, Ali McIntosh. I spoke to her. We had a conversation in reference to the political climate in this country. The discussion needed a big to come on the show. Like you see, listen, she's enthused and she's full of information. She's prepared and she's ready. And she don't know what's true.
Well, that's one of the first things she said. Now, Ms.
In reference to what you said about extending the executive order. See, based on my understanding of the extension, is that if the country were to get in a position where you need, things are going out of control, and the government need an emergency orders to stop, to slow down the spread, or to try and curb flatten the curve, or whatever they call it, then the government just want to have it in place where they don't have to reach Parliament, because if they try to do it without the standing order in place, it'll be illegal, right? And the government is just putting these things in place. So as they watch and during the time going on, they'll be able to shut down if the country need to. But if the country hasn't had a tourist on Bay Street from February 28th, no one, anyone in their right mind know that the government doesn't want the lockdown. The lockdown is needed. I come and take this around the world.
I think it's.
Let me finish, then you can come back. Hold on, let me finish. They said, countries around the world, right? Manchester, Ireland, all that. They having lockdowns, 18 weeks lockdown. They having 8 weeks lockdown,
And-
12 weeks lockdown. So
Let
it's
me
gotta
ask
be
you
a
about that, 'cause
reason.
I don't think you're talking about what is at stake right now. You're talking about something entirely different if you would ask me. Our very special guest, Ms. McIntosh, give me your views as it relates to this extension of this executive order. How you feel about it?
Well, good evening, Bahamas, and of course, it's good to be here. And he said something that really caused me to, almost want to jump in, but I am going to, because you're saying whether the government don't want to do it. The fact is, every case or every city has to determine based on their own case study what is happening in their area as to what to do. So us drawing attention to places in Europe that are having
No. I didn't say that we draw
Exactly.
issues.
Go ahead.
No, I mentioned.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. McIntosh. Go.
Yeah,
Ms. McIntosh, go ahead.
we don't have the need for the level of power the government is trying to seize. I'm putting it like that.
Okay.
I'm joining Joan Sawyer in this regard because I agreed with her. And yesterday we sent out, the Bahamas Constitution Party sent out a statement, said that the extension is unconstitutional and immoral. I love what Joan Sawyer said because what she said comes close to what I mean when I say it's immoral. Because number one, you need to actually have criteria for actually to declare an emergency order.
Right.
And according to Article 29, emergency has to exist. A public emergency has to exist.
We can't anticipate it's gonna.
Yeah, that is going to come. And not only that, when it's declared, the governor has to declare state of emergency for 14 days. They have to go to Parliament and agree with that. So my statement in the Bahamas Constitution Party has stood on this point, that every 14 days, they should come back and do this.
Right.
Not every 6 months, not every 30 days, every 40 days, every 14 days. We're talking about a state of emergency here. So a state of emergency has to exist, and every 14 days gives the latitude for any government, any emergency that exists in the country to actually be evaluated and make a determination if we need to do it another 14 days. So I think this government really is being evil and immoral in regards to the declaration of 6 months, or even projecting that they're going to take the latitude of 6 more months of emergency power.
Yeah, but based on my understanding of the extension of the executive orders, it's not to lock down it. It's to have the preliminary provisions, so in case there are warrants or needs a lockdown. You see, so I mean, plenty persons trying to construe the information to make it look like the government trying to get a 6 months lockdown. No.
Nobody's saying that. Nobody's
Listen,
saying that.
Some people saying that. I don't want to reduce it. I'm saying some people are saying that they're making it seem and appears that because the government is asking for a 6 month extension, mean that it'll be 6 months lockdown. No.
Well,
It's just a provision. So if there warrants a need for a lockdown,
Then they will do the lockdown.
then the lockdown.
no,
Okay,
no,
well said.
See,
Ms. McIntosh, go ahead.
The point is this: when you exercise, or when the government exercises Article 29, it is declaring a state of emergency. It means at that point
We are in emergency.
you are suspending the Constitution
Right.
and people's constitutional rights, which means if you are going to do that, if any government has to suspend the constitutional rights of the citizens,
It must be reasonable.
it has to be not only reasonable, it has to be in the shortest possible time. He cannot suspend and project that we're going to suspend it for another 180 days.
Right.
The latitude is as you continue to extend them for every 14 days. And I do think Glennis Hannah Martin said this, I think might have been in April, because I sent out a press statement agreeing with her that every 14 days should be an evaluation of whether we should extend up to 180 days, not project for 180 days. I think that what this government is doing is not right. I think that seizing power in this regard by putting an emergency order in place for 180 days is wicked.
No, but
Don't tell me provisions,
No,
because
listen.
that's what we pay them for, to go to that parliament every 14 days to extend it.
No,
Otherwise,
I understand.
yes.
I understand.
You know what?
I understand. Go ahead.
No, I was about to say, you know what, Ms. McIntosh? I knew somehow or the other, listening to some of the response that Independent Thinker had, because we on a chat group, and, you know, we'd be chatting back and forth to other people, and I listened to some of his comments, and I said, you know what? When he comes into the studio on Thursday, chances are he would agree with what Mr. Minister's doing right now.
No, I'm not agreeing with it.
Well,
I'm not agreeing with no lockdowns. I never agree with no lockdown.
I never lockdown. You're not agreeing with the lockdown.
No, sir.
I didn't say anything about the lockdown. You know.
All I did just now is explain. All I did is try to explain the justification why they're putting the 6-month provision in place. There ain't gonna be no lockdown, you know.
It's a
It only be a
season of
lockdown if
power.
it's warranted.
No,
That's all I'm saying. So I'm not saying we're not
listen,
agree no lockdown.
The
Don't
point
mix me up
of
about it. Don't get me
seizing
mixed up.
power, the point of seizing power, the point of suspending the constitutional rights of citizens. See what happens here with this, with these constitutional rights, which is freedom of movement, of assembly,
You taking that
freedom
away.
of expression, freedom from unnecessary detention. All of these constitutional rights are suspended by them taking power for 6 months or putting an emergency order in place, which means people are going to be arrested for breaking a curfew. That goes on their record. That is very, very awful. That people are going to have a record, a summary conviction of breaking a curfew of 9 o'clock.
So what do we-
And you know what's going to happen with that? You can't travel, you can't get some things done
Absolutely.
because of them seizing power. If that power was not in place, then that would not be able to happen. So I'm
Exactly.
saying their seizing of power is what is the wickedness, because the public emergency does not exist to the extent for which they feel they need to put it in place for 180 days.
Now, there is a saying, and not say a saying, people now are believing there's a reason behind this continual extension of this executive order. I tell you what, we're gonna take our first break. Listen, when we come back, I'm gonna open the phone lines. I know a lot of people out there, they're listening in. They wanna hear from, we wanna hear from them tonight. Because like I told them, I have Ali McIntosh in studio, and boy, let me tell you something. When it comes down to that Constitution, that lady know that like the palm of her hands. The numbers are 326-8255. We're gonna take a break, guys, and we're gonna be back. I have in Showtime, Prime Time. I got Independent Thinker in studio with me, my co-host, and of course, Ali McIntosh. We'll take a break, guys, and be back after this. Everybody, I'm in Showtime, Independent Thinker, and of course, Ali McIntosh in studio. And boy, let me tell you something. The air conditioning is to the top, but it's still getting hot in here, man. Ali McIntosh, prior to us taking a break, you all want to tell us how you feel about this why this extension and what can happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the possibilities of this extension and the loopholes that it brings with it. Tell us a little bit about that.
I was saying, as I was saying earlier, the fact is that the declaration of an emergency for that long of time, as I said, suspends the constitutional rights of Bahamians. Because it's such a long time, it means then we are now under certain penalties of law that should not be a penalty. Take, for instance, before, staying out after 9 o'clock in the evening would not be a penalty before, right?
Right, exactly.
And I think according to Article 19, I think a jurist, I think Kelvin Cunningham, was indicating to me nothing that was a crime, that was not a crime before the emergency order, can be considered a crime with penalty, with jail. So that becomes a problem when we put that in place. So the emergency order now makes crime what was not crime. And that should not be. That is why the problem is when you declare a state of emergency for the length of time, it means citizens are now feeling cramped that their rights are not are being taken away from them. And that is a problem. And every time the government has to declare a state of emergency or has to suspend the constitutional rights of citizens, it has to be with the purest intention, and it has to be merited, and it has to be with the shortest possible time. And if the government is taking this liberty that they're taking, and we understand the Constitution is saying that they can do this, but why do this if you don't have the merit to be able to make that happen? That's my problem with all of this.
Exactly, and most people were saying the same thing. When we look at say 3 months ago, 2.5 months ago, where we were, then we're not there now. We've seen a decline. we're seeing things are beginning to open back up. We getting ready now to open up the hotels and everything else like that. So why? Tell me why would you, unless, I mean, you could go ahead and say, we would, if it get any worse, then you could even go so far as to say a certain amount of infections. If we have a certain amount of infections and we have this amount of people that's in the hospital or hospitalized or wherever you all want to put it, then we would come back to Parliament and consider implementing a state of emergency. But don't go ahead, when you see progress happening, don't go ahead and put it in the state of emergency unless you have some other alternative.
Yeah, but the
motive.
state of emergency, Showtime, is not a lockdown.
That's
It's
not
only,
what I'm
it's
saying.
only
No, but it's-
preparing a provision
But
in
it's
case
suspending
it's
people.
warranted.
Right? But it's just, see, I'm getting right back to it. Not the point of it not being a lockdown. The state of emergency suspends constitutional rights.
That's not.
There has to be something wrong with that when you're just suspending my rights because you want, in case there is a couple of more cases that we can go
No, a
ahead
couple of
and
more cases.
every 14 days, the parliament, they see one thing, number one, the parliament is too lazy. They don't do enough work because they're not there enough time to be able to do enough work. Every 14 days, they should be able to go there and say, okay, we're having cases increase over the last 7 days, so we're going to go ahead and declare
Right.
another state, or we will another state of emergency, because that is what the Constitution says. 14 days, the governor declares a state of emergency. 14 days, Parliament goes, sanction that resolution. Those emergency powers come into play, and then they have to continue to extend it, as we say, by 14 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think not even a month, not even 6 weeks like we've been doing.
Yeah.
All of those countries that they're talking about where they are asking these kinds of lockdown, the people are rebelling because they know it's against their right of freedom of movement, freedom of everything, because we are now stuck almost in a cocoon, cannot move because the government wants to seize power.
326-8255. That's the number. The phone lines are open. I got a few people listening in from all the way in Grand Bahama. I want to say that my Grand Bahama listeners, hey, top of the evening to you guys, man. Anytime you feel like it, send me a text message, give us a call on the phone. Independent Thinker has his phone ready and available for text messages.
376-2301. I want to say good night to Facebook watchers. You have Brian McCarty, Ricardo Smith, Rhonda Wilson, and crew. Listen, we are trending live on Facebook. Independent Thinker, like my page. Join us. We're streaming live. Join us live. And listen, Showtime. I'm not the information or the statements that I make. It's not. You might take it that I support the lockdown. I don't. I'm saying.
But this is not about the lockdown.
I was only giving the reason what was given. The justification that was given for the extension of the emergency powers. Now,
You say what you were you given? What you given? You got a data or what you were going by?
No, I'm not saying
You say you was given.
I was only giving you
Oh,
the
you
reason
giving
what
me.
the government said.
Okay.
Why they
Why they say they're doing it?
because in case they need it.
In case.
In
Right.
case.
In case.
In case they need it.
In case. So I should go by the hospital now, just in case I start to
The
feel sick.
hospital is in,
Hold on, wait a
the
minute.
hospital is all boy.
No.
I
I said,
have the bill.
listen,
They're
we ain't
billing
talking about billing the hospital.
Hold on. They're billing outlets now.
What are you talking about?
Hospitals, outside hospital, to care for the people now. Because the hospital is overburdened.
What are you talking about now?
So what do you want me to say?
Listen to what I'm
Tell me-
saying.
no, tell me what you want me to say.
Okay.
I'm telling you
I'm
the truth.
not telling you what to say.
Okay.
I'm saying to you,
Mm.
I should go now to the hospital,
Right.
right? Just in case I start to feel sick, just go by the hospital right now. Hold on, listen to me.
Mm.
Go by the hospital,
Mm.
and I sit there, and someone said, "What you here for?" Man, just in case I start to feel sick, I ride into the hospital. That's
Right.
what I should do.
And you think that makes sense?
But this is the same
And you think that
analogy.
makes sense?
This is the same
Listen to me.
analogy.
Listen to me.
You want
So what is your suggestion right now? Tell the baby people now you lie on 97. Tell the baby people.
my suggestion in regards to what?
To the COVID pandemic crisis in this country, if we just open up and just allow everybody to just party, frolic, open up all the bars, and let everybody just do what they want, and then the country right now is at this peak. Plenty of the
We are at peak?
nicest.
We-
Hold on. But when I finish, then you plenty of the nicest, the doctors are out sick. right? Plenty of persons who on the front line are out sick dealing with their own recovery, right? So we should just, based on what I'm gathering, we should just open up the country and just remove all the restrictions and all the protection trying to keep this thing down at a minimum. Open up the country, allow it to happen, and do what the PLP say. The PLP say open up all the bars and give the woman a whistle to blow and then the crime starts down.
Point well taken.
If-
Like you were saying before we were interrupted, like you were saying, maybe there's a motive behind this. In your mind, what can be the motive? What can be the motive? Not what is the motive. What can be the motive in regards to the loophole, and what kind of grounds that will put us on?
Let's put it like this. When we look at the Constitution, and I was looking at Article 24, which is the protection of freedom of assembly and association, right? This Constitution says that except, and if you mind me reading this,
Go ahead.
so that people can understand the severity of when you call an emergency order according to Article 29. Now this is Article 24. Except with his consent, no person shall be hindered in the enjoyment of his freedom of peaceful assembly and association, that is to say, his right to assemble freely and associate with other persons, and in particular to form or belong to political parties, or to form or belong to trade unions or other associations for the protection of his interests. Nothing contained in or done under the authority of any law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in convention of this article to the extent that the law in question makes provision, which is reasonably required in the interest of defense, of public safety, public order, public morality, or public health, or for the purpose of protecting the rights and freedom of the other person, which imposes restriction upon the person holding office under the crown or upon the members of the disciplined force. Well, why I'm saying that, and I think I'm gonna say something that's in Article 19. The point is, when you suspend these rights of persons, because right here now we have from Article 15 to Article 28, all of these are constitutional rights that people enjoy from that belongs to them. It's an alienable right, no matter who is governing. And so when you suspend this, you are doing this, you have to do this because these things are in jeopardy, in defense of the public or the public health. Now we understand that the public health is important, but the public health is based on people who are sick and trying to spread disease, not people who are well and being locked down. So they are doing the reverse of what should be done. People who are sick should be quarantined. People who test positive should be quarantined, not people who are well locked up.
Well said. I think we got a call on the line. Let's go to our phone lines.
Hello.
Good evening, prime time, independent thinker, Ivan Showtime. What's on your mind?
Yes, let me make a point. You know, with this whole COVID-19 and whatever have you, from the started,
Yes, ma'am.
I believe that the authorities worldwide, Bahamas, Europe, USA, do not have the gist of what is happening with this COVID-19. I believe it's more of an economic agenda than a health agenda. Because when you look at it, like the lady said, all these extreme measures that are being taken, lockdowns and all of that. Okay, if this thing is that bad, why don't you be pushing health issues so as to curb it, like giving people free vitamins and all of this and what have you. So to me, it's more, the Bahamas doesn't understand, Europe doesn't understand. I feel like it's a $1 billion legal racket that is being staged worldwide, and the leaders in different countries really don't know what the true agenda is. And when you talk about a state of emergency, it must be something very out of hand and threatening to the stability, the psychological effect of a country. When you talk about this state of emergency, Jamaica, because of what the rioting and the looting and the mob-style behavior, they would always call a state of emergency, and years gone by under Manley and Seattle because of what they feared had gone on. But when you talk about a state of emergency, it's like you fear a coup d'etat or someone is going to come over and whatnot. This is just a health agenda. A state of emergency shouldn't be done. Like you said, you do an assessment, you know where you go, and you cannot compare the Bahamas with Europe because you have a total geographical area. You have a whole different health system. The diet is different of the people. The climate is different. All these things have to come into effect. When you're looking at it, the Bahamas here, we have to deal with what we have. We cannot compare with other countries. So I think what the authorities here need to do, when you look at it, right? COVID-19, if you drive around this island, the slums that appear, what we need to do, we need an island-wide campaign. COVID-19, if this thing is that bad, we should be emphasizing health issues. What happened to the environment, how people, you pass some of these houses, the outside toilet is like a luxury. So you can smell the sewer. Some people, they don't have the luxury of a toilet. The yard is the toilet. So if this thing is this devastating, why aren't we taking measures? Locking down the country is not going to do it. When you look at the Bahamas in years gone by, the poor ghetto areas, as we would call it, the inner city, they were kept clean. But now we have derelict vehicles, we have old garbage, and those are the breeding grounds for disease. So to me, this whole thing is being blown out of proportion. It's more of an economic agenda, and by now the public will realize that it's all someone who's in making this pharmaceutical company, what they do, they want to make everybody panic that this thing is this bad. You know, if you're in the house, you're going to catch this COVID-19. You come out, you're going to catch it. So what happens now? When you get people's mind hyped up to that point, they're so paranoid. So when you push something up to say, this is the magical cure, by that time, everybody is so paranoid now.
They can take it.
Some of that.
Yeah, but caller, so do you believe that the COVID-19 is a real threat to the human?
I believe an unclean environment is more of a threat than the COVID-19 because, all right, when you look at it, when you have slums are the breeding grounds for psychological disaster and health disaster. So the COVID-19 is just a minor, it's just the tip of the iceberg. When I look at the Bahamas, the grade used to be 50s and 60s. When you drive around now, it's like you're in some outback safari. So some disease this bad was supposed to come, none of us would be alive because the country is like a slum. And it looks like everybody is not aware of what's happening with these neighborhoods. We need the environmental health people to come and go canvassing from yard to yard and bring yourself up to standard, like the way they used to do in the old days.
Wow. Well said, caller. Well said.
COVID-19 to me is just a big hoax. It's them trying to get the whole public riled up. And you so paranoid. When they had that march for the guy who Black Lives Matter, if this thing was that disastrous, the people weren't going to mend it. Well, there's thousands and something is more to this than what meets the eye. It's an economics and the pharmaceutical companies, they already say how much $billions worth of vaccines they do. And who are they going to use it on? The black people. We could be the guinea pig. It's not for Europe. It's not for the USA, but they're going to bring it to the Caribbean. Why? Because we have black world leaders who are just going to bow and not ask any questions.
Yeah, but
caller.
This
thing is all about.
Yeah, but caller, that information, I think you offered some of that information. Ain't only black people. The first set of people who will be served that vaccine will be the health workers, the doctors, the nurses. So it cannot be a hoax. COVID-19 is real. Plenty of people are dying from it. You have over 250,000 people that's died in the United States since March. So I mean, if you saying it's a hoax and it's a panic and this and that, listen. Trust me.
I think
COVID-19
in actuality, she's probably saying it's just not as devastating as people think.
So
anyway,
caller, before you go, what would you suggest this government do? Just open up the country and just allow the bars and the parties to start because it's the Christmas holidays. This is Thanksgiving Day, and you think we should just open up the country and let everybody just continue as normal? What is your suggestion before you hang up?
What I think what we should do is that limit the amount of people, but let things flow, because when you lock down something, you have 100 people inside, but when you let them out, it's like they're frantic. It's like a different environment. So if you were to put in a curfew and do the necessary things like the 6 feet distancing and the mask and what have you, but political backlash from all of that.
Okay, thank you, caller. Really
Right.
appreciate you calling.
Well said, appreciate you call that.
Oh boy. She's on
Ms.
it.
McIntosh?
Yes, sir.
You hear what she said?
Yes, I
She's
did.
of the view that this is a hoax, somewhat, and that, there's a pharmaceutical
Well, she-
money thing, and they're gonna make billions of dollars of it, and so,
I
do
think
you
what-
believe it's a hoax
I
also?
think what she
Do
means
you-
is it's been contrived in that, you can always set things up. And one thing Machiavelli said, you can start a war, but you know it's going to end.
End.
And I think those who started COVID-19 with the view that we're going to sell billions of dollars in vaccine, and we're going to do all of the things in the conspiracy theory of destroying the economy of countries so that we can now be beholden to the government. That is a very real thing because
Yeah.
look where it is.
What-
Look, we are right where they say we would be in regards to this matter. And I'm saying that because every country is following the very same trend. Our country doing the very same thing. Based on Article 19, and I said I would refer to that, is that the point of no person, this Article 19 says no person shall be deprived of his personal liberty save as may be authorized by law in any one of the following. Now there's a lot of them, and one of them, which is F, says, for the purpose of preventing the spread of infectious disease or contagious disease, or in the case of a person who is or reasonably suspected to be, whether of sound mind or is trying to spread a disease. I'm saying that because when this COVID-19 started, right? When we had the first case, you see how we quickly shut down the whole country because one case.
One case. Yeah.
Now, one case, and that case had suspected people, what they call for contact tracing. But you know what was so interesting? See, that was a very important person.
And nobody knew who it was.
So not only that nobody knew who they was, what they did was because that person was an important person, and the person who they were in contact with or other important person, instead of putting the protocol or following the protocol that they said that they would do, they did not. Because there is no such thing as self-quarantine. When we have quarantine all of your life, how long you live in this world, and you don't have to answer that.
Yeah.
When we have a quarantine, it means that you are isolated in an institution. So you don't send people home to quarantine. When people self-isolate, it is because they suspect they may have been in contact with something. But self-quarantine is no such thing. There's no such thing. We make it up because we didn't want our friends to be put into an institution.
Right.
And that's where the government of the Bahamas dropped the ball.
Right.
By changing the protocol in which they said that if somebody tested positive, they would be quarantined. They decided that was not going to be so because somebody important was the first person who was tested and exposed. And that was the first thing that they did wrong. Once they changed the protocol, everything went wrong. So we have to lay the blame of everything that has happened in this country at the feet of the government because they should have
I want
gone
you to
with
say
the...
that- say
Let me
that
tell you
again.
why.
Say that again and tell me why.
Let me tell you why. When you say, if somebody is positive, we will quarantine them. Quarantine means is to be put in an institution, isolated away, in an institution. You cannot self-quarantine. So when the government says, because you're a doctor, because you are so-and-so, you don't have to quarantine in the Princess Margaret. You could go back home to your big, beautiful house where you have your bathroom and everything else. So that was the base, because some of those people in the first 8 to 10 people who was tested positive, they went into their wonderful self-quarantine, and other person cases came back because they went home to self-quarantine. If we had put the first cases in quarantine as it's supposed to be, we would not have cases number 8 that came from case number 1 or case number 2.
I see we got a call on the line. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to the phone lines real quick. We want to keep them holding. Good evening, prime time, independent thinker. Ivan Showtime, and yes, Ali McIntosh. What's on your mind?
Good evening. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good. Yes, I was hearing the host and what they're saying, but based on the fact of the numbers that we're talking about, there's no way that no country could quarantine everybody. Okay, it was where at the end of the day, if you felt like you had this symptom and you have been tested positive, if you have the means where you can self-isolate, that is something that all countries did. There was not where once you test positive, we're going to now grab you and throw you into some exclusive place and you're quarantined. So let's get that point straight.
Then why did
I'll
they
tell
say
you what,
that?
I'll tell you what, caller.
100%.
Why-
Let Ms. McIntosh respond to that. Ms. McIntosh, go ahead.
You caller, you're 100% correct, and that's what I was trying to tell them. You cannot quarantine every. Princess Margaret, listen. When they sell and give away Botago,
Quarantine 50 people at Princess Market.
you don't want those
Yes,
specs.
well, they should not. They
I
should.
don't understand.
let's
Hold
give
on,
Ms.
man.
McIntosh.
They
Ms.
should not have
McIntosh,
made it a principle.
Give her a chance.
Protocol.
Ms. McIntosh is the one who
See,
brought up this.
I'm saying.
What is it? It's no thing as self-quarantine.
Yeah.
Explain that to the callers. So
No,
they
but
will
we
understand.
know that of all our living, we have known that when somebody says quarantine, it means that you are locked in an institution, right? The fact that we know when we said it,
That's when you're talking about a pandemic.
when we said it,
Which means you're talking about the greater population.
well, we didn't. We should have made sure.
There's no way that the Bahamas can quarantine everybody.
Nowhere.
No,
it's impossible.
well, they should not have said
impossible.
it. See,
Right.
you don't make a
It's impossible.
protocol if you know you cannot
Impossible.
carry it through.
See,
this is my thing. If you know, see that's one thing with government and their planning. Sometimes they never walk it through.
Right.
They just say this sounds good, so let's do it.
Let's do it.
You should have. They should know that they could not quarantine everyone, and they should have said.
That's why the World Health Organization would have recommended self-isolation in those cases where persons can be alone somewhere, where they don't not in a position to go into the community and spread it. But to say everybody now because you test positive, we got to put you in Princess Margaret.
No.
No,
Listen, caller, you're 100% correct.
The call is correct, but it's the policies of the government.
No, but
I
the
think-
policies of the government
Call-
are not.
It's the
That was the recommendation of the World Health Organization.
Caller, I think what sorry to interrupt you. What I think Ms. McIntosh is saying, and you're quite right with what you're saying. It's just about impossible for you to be able to quarantine everybody. So in actuality, you shouldn't say.
You shouldn't say it.
But understand what I'm saying, caller.
You-
You are not wrong with what you're saying, you know.
The one case that you found in the Bahamas, don't think that's only one case.
Yes, but caller, you're right with what you're saying, you know.
Quarantine everybody. Self-isolation is what the world is doing for those persons who can. Okay, right now we can't quarantine everybody. That's impossible.
Well, Mr. Caller,
You said it right.
the caller, you're
right.
correct. But when you make a policy, Mr. Caller,
That's what she's
as
talking
a
about.
government, you have to make the policies and speak the words in which you want people to resonate to. And so if you said, this is what we are going to do, they said quarantine. You can't say quarantine when you mean self-isolate, because they are two different things. Because the first set of cases went and self-quarantine, they didn't really quarantine. Some of the cases that came back were people who went home to self-quarantine.
Exactly.
Yeah, so see, and not only that, in March, we would have solved this problem really early.
If we to jump on top of it.
We would have solved it early because in March, the chairman of the Bahamas Constitution Party was looking into some medical research in this regard. One thing we brought to the attention of the competent authority, the Minister of Health, is that interferon is a medicine that works like an inhibitor, which means once we would have tested persons who were tested positive in these early stages, giving them interferon would have stopped not only the spread, that inhibitor would have done some things to stop the spread of the disease in that person and the spread of the disease. The Minister of Health said he doesn't think we should use it. We had gotten 200 doses of this medicine donated free. But it was politics, why they did not want to use the interferon. The interferon even now is working, had to been taken into Europe, and now a public company is now selling it. But because it was coming out of Cuba, nobody wants to use the interferon. But the interferon would have been an inhibitor that when somebody tested positive, if we give them interferon, and I'm not a doctor, but this is basically what the medical researchers said, that this would have stopped the spread everywhere that those Cuban doctors and nurses went to and used interferon. The cases are down to nothing. And our government loaned the Bahamas airplane to go to Cuba, pick up the doctors, and carry them to St. Lucia to treat the people in St. Lucia where there is no cases. It's down to nothing, and they wouldn't even do it for here. So if they really wanted to stop, if they really wanted, if I may color,
Hold on, 1 second, caller, 1 second.
if they
caller.
really wanted to do something, they would have gone with what the medical people are saying. But when you play politics, you play politics with a life.
Okay, caller, start over again, because I
Sorry,
couldn't
yeah,
hear you.
yeah.
Go ahead, say it again.
We're finally getting to some point now where we may be finding a cure for this. But to say that in the early stages, the government knew that. No country knew that. Okay, if this drug, whatever you're talking about, actually was a cure for it.
It's an inhibitor.
We're actually just getting to a point now where we feel that we may have a vaccination, and there's reservations even with that.
You don't need a vaccination when there's a cure.
So I really feel you're really being disingenuous.
No, sir. There is no need for a vaccination if there is a cure.
This is beyond politics.
Are you a member of the government?
Yeah. So
Are you a member of the government?
contribution for the night, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, you gotta make that contribution.
Yeah.
They intentionally misled us to say quarantine is the same as self-isolation. No, that is what was recommended. We definitely would have not the space for any sort of widespread
Yes.
sort of basis to really to support a large population for quarantine. So self-isolation was what was recommended. Let's see if we can get this person in a place where they're not in a position to spread this disease.
Yes.
But they say, once you test positive, we're going to quarantine you. We got some place where you can go. Everybody come here and go here.
Yeah, that point you made, that it was almost
Ask him if
impossible
he heard that the
You're right.
government said that.
Anyway,
Did the
caller,
government say
appreciate
that?
your call, man.
Thank you very much, and I'm enjoying your show.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
man.
sir.
Appreciate your contribution.
Did we hear the government say that though? Did the government
Yeah.
say that they would quarantine people?
But listen, like you said, sometimes we have a tendency, when I say we, I'm talking about the government, everybody. We say things, but we don't understand and follow, not say understand, we don't follow it through to understand exactly what we're saying. Because always you're gonna have loopholes to just about anything. Independent thinker. While the caller was on, you were about to say something?
No, but I understand you all do what you're doing. So it seems like
Yeah.
you all don't want me to be a part of the conversation, but I can tell you this. The government has been, based on the information that the media being disseminated, the government has rented Breezes Hotel, the hotel here on Market, every place the government could find that was willing to allow the quarantine person that go there. The government's paying that. Your tax dollars are paying for that. Number one. Number two, the hospital has surpassed its limit. Before the government even had a pandemic to deal with, the hospital, I visited the hospital in 2016, before the election, and people was on gurney in the hallway.
In the hallway.
Right. In 2016, elections in 2017. So, and there wasn't no pandemic then. And people was on gurney, what do you call them, trolley, in the hallway with bag on them. They got the bag,
So if
on them, right? But what I'm saying is, if you understand that people at that time, because even the Prime Minister at that time made a statement that people are pronouncing themselves dead in the hospital. I don't remember that. You remember that? No, so you laughing, but I'm saying that to show you the state of affairs the health system was in 2016.
Okay.
In 2016, without the pandemic.
Okay.
So what do you expect to happen now?
How was it in
Right?
1992? Was it in the same state in 1992?
In 1992?
Uh-huh.
When was the independent law?
I said in 1992. You could have told me
No, I can't-
2016.
no,
Very good.
no, I can't
Now
tell
I
you-
mentioned 1992,
Okay, go ahead.
and you sound like you all mix up. You don't understand what I'm
I
saying.
accept. I give
Okay.
you the facts. You ain't accept it because you
Listen.
believe
Okay.
you feel like
So-
the government's responsible. The government's responsible. The state affairs, the health, you know.
I
listen,
Public health
listen,
is a government's
are
responsibility.
continuous.
Government.
Governments
All
are
government.
continuous, right?
Yes.
Governments are continuous.
Yes.
And governments are continuous. Number one, the former Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Hubert Alexander Ingram, if my mind served me correctly, he said one of the justification of selling Batelco was to build a new hospital someplace up here on Skyline, or some Prospect Ridge or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Batelco sold,
No hospital.
no hospital. We are still dealing in 2020 with a hospital that was wrong. I even know when the Princess Margaret
But
was
this-
Successive governments, and
yes.
No, but I'm saying you- I'm not-
Don't try to put it on just one government.
I
No, no.
don't know one government. I tell you what
Successive
happened. I'm only giving
successive.
you the facts what happened.
Yes, we
So I
understand
put it
that.
on, I put on no government, I put on no Pacific government. I said,
you call a year
he
though,
said,
to try to substantiate something.
I said when I be in the hospital in 2016.
Okay.
So I must have said when I be in the
Okay,
hospital.
go by the hospital, see if you see the same results now. You think so?
It gotta be worse than that now.
Okay.
Because you have a pandemic. We didn't have no pandemic in 2016.
No, because
There was no pandemic in
that's not
2016.
the interest of the government right now. The
I
interest
know
of, that's not the interest.
Listen, the interest,
The interest of the government right now.
Listen, the
Okay,
interest of the
let's
government is
go
for
ahead.
them
Who?
to worry about. Not me. I am not in the government.
Yeah.
I'm not a senator. I'm not an MP. I'm not a cabinet minister.
We understand
That's their
that.
business. So I don't want nothing to do with that.
Okay.
I'm saying the state of affairs the country is in is as a result of the pandemic. In 2016, when I went there, people was on trolley without pandemic.
May-
That's all I'm saying.
may I-
Okay,
You want me to say that?
I gotta ask you a question.
May I say
If somebody were to ask you something right now, let me ask you this. Right now, what kind of money you would think it would take to turn around the Princess Margaret Hospital right now?
What kind of money?
Yeah. What,
You can't turn around that hospital. That
Hold
hospital.
on. Okay,
the
all right. What did it cost to build a new
You,
hospital then?
you,
Let's put it
gotta
that
allow,
way.
you gotta allow me to respond, man.
Yes, sir, go
You
ahead.
gotta allow me to respond.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Listen to me. You cannot turn around Princess Margaret Hospital. There's no more space to build nothing else. We need a new hospital. Listen to me. You ask me a question, let me answer you.
Yes, sir.
We need a new hospital, right? We need the same hospital that Hubert Alexander Ingham said Botelgo for. When he justified he said Botelgo for, right? Before Botelgo was on 2010. Was it 2010?
I only ask you what you think it'll cost to build a new hospital. That's all I ask you.
Well,
you
clearly
can't tell me
it-
how to respond. Hold on, man.
Okay.
You cannot tell me how to respond to you. Right? You ask me a question, let me respond to you. My response is the state of affairs that the health system is in is at its limit. When you and I guess make segments that this and the government and listen, you cannot put everybody in Princess Margaret Hospital. It's no space. It's no
You're not answering the question I ask you. Who are you running over all this? One question I ask you, how much money it'll take to build a new hospital?
a new hospital may cost payment people maybe 150 million.
Okay,
150 million, 200 million.
So how much
Right.
money?
My
so
estimation.
Your estimation. How much money you think they spend on the sidewalk?
I think they spend about $20 million on sidewalk. I think that's what they allocate for the sidewalks for the $20
20
million.
million. You think that 20 million should have gone towards building a new hospital?
No, sir.
Okay.
You know what? Why I think that the 20 million shouldn't be good? They allocate $20 million for the sidewalk to jumpstart the economy by getting 20 people awake. If you go to each sidewalk that's being put down, it's about 25 to 30 people waking. 25
And you build a
to
hospital.
30 people. So what you saying
And
is
you build a hospital,
do not
you can hire people too.
hire the behaving people who waking. Let them continue to lose
If you
the
build a
rent.
hospital, you could
Right.
hire Bahamian people too.
Right.
Think about it. If you're building a
But
hospital,
you can't
could
build
hire-
a hospital with $20 million.
I say
The building on Thompson Boulevard right down the road from us started at a contract at somewhat 5.9 million. When it finished,
Yeah,
it cost the gaming people what 32 million dollars. Right. If you take $20
Anyway,
million dollars,
I said-
hold on, man. Listen, hold on now. You gotta hold on, brother. Listen to me. You can't ask me a question and you trying to.
No, because you're not answering the question.
I answering. I might
No,
answer what
you're
you
running
want.
all kind of things pertaining to another building and all that. Ain't nobody asking about no other building. Ain't nobody asking about no other building.
Okay, yes, sir. I understand. Yes, sir.
Ain't nobody asking about no other building. 326-8255. That's the number. The phone lines are open. Those of you who want to join the conversation, feel free, man. Ms. McIntosh, back to our conversation that we were having. We were talking about what will it take for this country as it is right now to see what direction this government coming in and what they trying to throw at the Bahamian people right now.
Well, what I think, number one, is public health is a government responsibility. We know that. It's a government responsibility. We can't all do it. Now, we know that all the doctors, they all have their own private clinics, which is good, and that helps to subsidize the public health based on what is happening. But the basic responsibility for public health is the government's responsibility. Now, as we know, successive governments have promised a new hospital. And while I'm on the matter of Princess Margaret Hospital, the successive governments has promised a hospital in Grand Bahama. The Rand Memorial Hospital in Grand Bahama, you could just cry.
They're in the parking lot.
They're in the parking lot. I wanted to cry. I was there a couple of weeks ago, probably by the time it's run by so quickly. Both hospitals in New Providence and Grand Bahama is really almost under siege. Grand Bahama needs a hospital now. I think what is happening is the lack of planning of both administrations, of both the PLP and the FNM. You mentioned 1992. coming out of 1992, they said they would build a hospital in Grand Bahama. That did not happen. It changed from PLP to F&M to PLP to F&M and PLP to F&M. We are now at this point now in Grand Bahama now. The people are in the yard. The center that is using, and I didn't want to go all here, but the place that is has 6 beds. The cancer center across the street from the Rand Memorial Hospital Emergency has about 6 to 8 beds.
But the government is...
So the people are scared to get sick in Grand Bahama right now.
Yeah,
The Princess Margaret Hospital, as Marlon alluded to, is really in a terrible state because that should have been built. Even the section they put on, I mean, they have beds up there, but the emergency room still, which was planned for about probably 10 people, usually have about 50 to 60 people. People are all in the hallway. I've been there before. So the lack of planning of both the F&M and the PLP government over the last 25 years, they should be booted and run out of office and run out of town to allow the state of public health to get to a point where the Bahamian people are suffering. This pandemic didn't cause Princess Margaret to be in the condition it is,
Right.
nor Rand Memorial Hospital.
I tell you what, McIntosh, save that thought for me, okay? I know we due for a break. Guys, when we come back, of course, we're going to go to the phone lines. I see that my line all lit up. The number again, 326-8255. We take a break, guys. I'll be back after this. Stay with us now. Showtime, prime time, Tuesday. Actually, Wednesday. It's Wednesday.
Thursday.
It's Thursday. I know I get it right. I live it too good. I live it too good. Thursday night. Independent Taker, Miss McIntosh. Of course, Miss McIntosh, prior to us taking a break, you were getting deep in the conversation. Go ahead.
No, I wanted to say, and I agree with Independent Thinker in that, and I've said that the lack of planning of both successive governments over the last 25 years. He indicated that Hubert Ingram said that he was selling Patelco to build a new hospital. Mm-hmm. So he had to been estimating that the $200 that he sold Patelco for would have been able to build a new hospital.
Million.
200 million.
Mm-hmm.
Say $200. Yeah, the 200 million. He assumed that would be the amount for a hospital. But what needed to be is they needed to have made a hospital in a different location. Mm-hmm. If they had done that, then they could have started fresh because that building where Princess Margaret is an old building. Yes. And a lot of the roof, there's a lot of compromise in that regard. So over the last 25 years, since 1992, as they said, we could have built a new hospital in Grand Bahama, in New Providence. I got to keep saying Grand Bahama because the people in Grand Bahama are scared to get sick.
But one of the things I always taught Ms. McIntosh is the fact that we have a prime minister now. When he first came into office, I was saying we have a prime minister who's a doctor, who worked around the Princess Margaret Hospital, and of course a former minister of health. So he had personal experience as to what Princess Margaret is like. So I thought that would have been a priority for him to
First
say,
agenda.
First of all, we need to see, because the health of the nation is the wealth of the nation. I don't care what nobody says, okay? Now, for us to be able, anybody to go to the hospital and have to cross their fingers and be so protective of this and that and the next thing, I have yet to get into a conversation with someone who's been to the Princess Margaret and say they had a wonderful experience, or an experience where they don't have a problem going back no more. Everybody that I talk to.
Well, I was at the hospital, you know. I had 2 life-threatening situations at the Princess Margaret Hospital. Not at the hospital, where I had to be taken to the Princess Margaret Hospital. Now, I must say that they took care of me. They took care of me, you know, they helped the Lord not let me die. I always say it like that, the nurses and doctors. But the point is, I'm somebody of a name, right? So, but what about some people who don't have a name? And that's always my concern, you know. I might have a name and you say, oh, that's Ali McIntosh, oh, let's take care of. And then, of course, the drayload of people who is coming to make sure that they take care of me. What about the little old lady who don't have anybody? And that has been always my concern. If you can do it for me, you can do it for somebody else. You know, so that has to be the kind of care that we have at a public hospital. If you can do it for a person who is a big-time person, you can do it for a little old lady sitting on a gurney in the hallway.
So, Marcus, what do you think it'll take? What it'll take? I listened to some of the things that the DNA talked about in terms of turning this country around, getting us on a better track and all that. What do you think needs to happen?
The priority has to be about not only about compassion, number one, and the needs of this country. If we have compassion for the things that we see is happening, we have to make sure, just like I just said before, if you can do it for me, if you can get my passport in one day, you can get somebody else's passport in one day. And that's the kind of government I want to have. If you can do it for a popular person, I have no problem that I have a name and I can call and you can get it done for me. But please do it for the next person who has the need too. So we want to make sure that when we put a government in place, that we abide by these values that are put in the preamble of the Constitution. That our commitment is to everyone. Our commitment is to make sure that we run the country with self-discipline, industry, loyalty, unity, abiding respect for Christian values, and the rule of law. The second part of this Constitution, we hardly talk about that, but it says that we have committed that no man, woman, or child will ever be enslaved or bondsman to anyone, their labor frustrated or their frustrated or their lives frustrated by deprivation. What is happening in this country is all of the values that are in the preamble of the Constitution is not included in the governance of the nation. And because the leaders of the nation have lost sight of what the founders intended for this preamble of this Constitution, and I want people to go online and find it and read it. It's on our website, bcpparty.org, or even the government website. But if they look at it, they will hold these governments more accountable. That how they govern has to be with more heart, soul, and law. It is very important that if we're going to do whatever we're going to do, we got to turn this country around. We got to diversify the economy. We have to make sure food security. And if, like the caller said earlier, if we suggested to the people how to bring their immune system up regarding this COVID-19, if we suggest to people how to eat right, how to keep their surrounding, we would have a different situation when it comes to COVID-19. There are many people who have not catch COVID-19 and probably never will. They are not pushing the ideas that are necessary to make sure that the Bahamian people, by law, not just by law, but by their suggestion, do what is right to keep yourself from COVID. It is not just the government's responsibility to treat people with COVID, but it's also their responsibility to help people not get COVID by giving the kind of health instructions for people to be able to keep themselves.
Well said. Now, Ms. McIntosh, you someone who's studied the Constitution quite a bit. I can say that, right?
Yes, this is a copy I've had for the last 20
years. Yeah, is there
years.
anything that is binding in that Constitution that allow the people itself to rebel, not say rebel, but to not allow the Prime Minister to have this extended state of emergency?
All of the constitutional rights that is in the Constitution, and of course, as we know, the chapter 1, Article 2 said the Constitution is the supreme law of the Bahamas, right? And subject to the provision of this Constitution, if any other law is inconsistent with this Constitution shall prevail, and other law to the extent of that inconsistency be void, which means even the Emergency Powers Act that comes based on Article 29 of the Constitution, those law has to be consistent also with the Constitution. That is the reason why when we who are constitutionalists, who says that if you are going to suspend any of these constitutional rights, these fundamental rights at any time, it has to be based on those stipulations, and it has to be for the shortest possible time. So when the Prime Minister, who is using the Article 29 in his Emergency Powers Act to go ahead and carnage almost the constitutional rights of people, suspended, of course we know it's suspended, but the fact that we can be arrested because of his taking power as the competent authority, we can be arrested. I mean, the competent authority become judge and jury and executioner.
So in actuality, there's nothing we can do.
Because of the temporary measures. That's why in the 29th, it is important in Article 29 that it is important that there are legitimate reason why you're gonna have to, and it says a time of war.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's say, and again, guys, the phone lines are open, it's 326-8255. 326-8255, that's the number, the phone lines are open. Let's just say if for some reason, and I'm not suggesting this, but if for some reason the Prime Minister say, from here on in, we could be a communist country. I mean, what would happen then? A war will break out, or everybody has to listen to what he says, because he's the competent authority, right? I mean, you study the Constitution, you could tell me if that's something that can be possible.
It is not, but it appears that obviously the politicians have lost sight of morality. And because they have seen power, they have seen how this acquisition of power with the competent authority, that this can go on. They assume it can go on forever. But the Constitution doesn't allow that. I think the citizens have to stand up. All these jurists who knows how to get before the court has to now go before the court and contest his right to continue this. Now, Judge, former attorney, not former attorney, but former Court of Appeal President Dame Joan Sawyer, indicated that he has, based on the Constitution, to extend these for 2 years. And she believed, based on her thinking, that he is doing this to push the election further down the road.
For what?
Because of the fact that he has already indicated he wants 7 years, he wants 7 more years. So this might be an easy way he feels that he can do it. But based on this preamble of the Constitution, we have to have...
It'd be virtually impossible.
What?
It'd be virtually impossible for the Prime Minister to extend if there's not a reason. People wouldn't support that.
Well, he is the competent authority.
The competent authority or not. He's not an island by himself. I mean, listen to me.
So the whole cabinet is doing this then?
I don't think so.
Who all vote for it?
Ask them. Because all along, the Prime Minister, the office of the Prime Minister was the competent authority, but now after this new, I think, marketing company come in to make sure that the Prime Minister looked a little softer than a dictator, so now the whole cabinet is the competent authority. So the payment people ought to make sure that the entire cabinet pays for anything that happens regarding the work of the competent authority. So if they are voting for all of these things, infringement of our whole life to happen, then they must pay. And of course, he's not going to get away with going on and on to say, oh, let's go into a dictatorship. It's not going to happen.
No,
he's one man.
Listen, the dictatorship talk and communist
Yeah,
talk,
many
that's
people
a
say
PLP
that.
rhetoric. Listen,
Okay.
the Bahamas, listen, if you read Bahamas order, if you read it earlier, and you said subsection F states, for the purpose of
Article 19?
preventing,
Okay.
Article 19, subsection F, it says, for the purpose of preventing the spread of an infectious or contagious disease, or in the case of a person who or he is supported to be of unsound mind, abolish of drugs or alcohol, or as a vagrant, for the purpose of his explaining the treatment,
Yeah, treatment.
right? That could be the only reason, Section F could be one of the major reason or main reason that the government trying to continually control the level of this pandemic. Now, based on the armchair politicians who everyone have a view, everyone have his opinion, they want the country to open up. What you suggest, Ms. McIntosh, as the servant leader of the Constitutional Party, what you suggest the government do beginning Monday with this COVID thing? What's your suggestion as the party leader? If
You mean in opening
were
the
the
country?
Prime Minister, if you were the Prime Minister Monday morning coming, what would be your focus and your view on what to do, and what would be your order for the Bahamian people going forward from Monday coming on the 28th of November?
So is there a change in terms of the opening of the country? Because the government is cherry picking how they are working with this opening, right? Because they are asking tourists to come to the Bahamas, enjoy our beaches, when we are stuck at home. I mean, how do you cherry pick like that? That makes no sense.
No, but we are not stuck at home.
No.
We are not stuck at, listen.
We're not
we are
stuck
not
at
stuck at home. The curfew starts at 9 o'clock, and it's very seldom you see people enjoying the beach 9 p.m. in the night.
Okay, the purpose of lockdowns or self-quarantine is to quarantine people who are sick, right? So those persons who've been tested and have tested, then of course they should be self-quarantined or whatever it is that we are doing. But I think the measure of using masks, I think the measures of social distancing they can stay in place because the people should be allowed to roam about the country because of this. In this, economic carnage is happening to the Bahamian people. Some businesses not even open. There was a gentleman next to my office whose taxi he has not had for use. The government is using this experience of COVID-19 almost to destroy the economy. They say they're not doing it, but they surely are cherry picking it out.
Listen, we have one pillar, Ms. Martin.
One pillar what?
All right. Tell the Bahamian people now what all pillars and strength that this country runs off right now.
Okay, we planned the tourism, right? Before the COVID-19, 67% of the GDP was based on tourism.
So what's the other 33%?
Well, the part of it, about 15 or so percent of it was on banking, and then of course the other local businesses.
Listen, banking is down now to maybe about 7 to 12%.
But the point is, let's put it like this: the BCP has a desire to turn the country 180 degrees, and when we say that, we mean tourism while it will be our focus, we expect the tourism could only be 15% of GDP. And while we're saying that is because we believe that we need to create economies, not just economies, but industries in the country to cause Bahamians to now manufacture certain things. There are, and you can go to our website, bcpparty.org. We are going to be releasing a second website very shortly, but in the month of January, we will release the entire 94-page of Mandate 2022. Our part of our thing is to have food security. We want to use food security for the Bahamian people to begin to farm and grow husbandry. Every kind of food production, which is animal husbandry and planting for every kind of food. We can grow corn, we can make chips, we can make oil. All of these things can be done if we begin to grow. If you go on Facebook, we are just blasting Facebook with a lot of things that we want to do. Food security is going to be able to create a lot of jobs. The diversification of the economy is going to create a lot of jobs because the natural resources, a lot of industries can come out of the natural resources. But because
before you go to break, Ms. McIntosh, you were saying that food security is one of the main trusts of the BCP.
The BCP
Party.
Yeah.
So isn't that the former administration was on that part? When the former prime minister, in one statement he made, he said that they are prepared to spend $100 million on BAMSI. And I'm asking you, is BAMSI working? Has BCP went to Andres and take a look at what
our BCP deputy leader of the BCP lives in South Andres.
South Andres?
Right down the street from BAMSI.
Oh, that's not Andres, Central Andres.
Central Andres. He lives there, okay? We have our deputy leader, Cornelius McKinney, lives in South Andros. So he can tell us, it is not working. Besides, there are 3 things that BAMSI grows: lemon, papaya, and onions, what they throw away. So if we are going to actually produce food, it has to get to the community. And part of what we will do is create avenues to getting in lines of transportation, that will get the food from wherever it's produced to wherever it goes. So every island will be an island that has a particular animal husbandry that we're growing and actually vegetables or fruits that we're growing. But there's a comprehensive plan as to how we're going to provide food security, how we're going to get it throughout the country, and how we're going to eat.
All right, perfect.
Sorry.
Ms. McIntosh, sorry about that. I know we overdue for a break. Let's take our final break of the evening. Don't forget now, 326-8255 is the number. When we come back, we'll take the 1 or 2 phone calls. We'll take a break and be back after this. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. Ivan Showtime, prime time, independent thinker, Ms. McIntosh. And boy, Ms. McIntosh, you give us a whole history lesson as regards to BAMSI and obviously some of the things that BAMSI should be growing. And I see you must hit the trigger because all our lines now are open. Let's take a call. Good evening, prime time, independent thinker, what's on your mind?
A very pleasant good evening, Mr. Showtime and Mr. Independent Thinker, and a special good evening to your guest.
Good evening, ma'am.
Wonderful. I just want to take this opportunity to first of all congratulate you, madam, for your consistency, the consistency that you have had throughout politics in this country. And I want to let you know
Thank you.
that although you might not have heard of some of the women, but we are out here praying for you because you have contributed so much to this country. And I hope that your legacy would live on.
Thank you so much.
Something I have a concern for
Okay.
is that I think you need to join up with another party.
What?
I really think you need to join up with another party and try and persuade them about how important the Constitution is. I think your candidacy will have more strength, I would say. How do you feel about that?
Could I answer?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you so much, madam. I feel very humbled by your words. But I have found that the PLP and the FNM, the major establishment in this country, has agendas that I am not prepared to sit with. I have always told people I am never prepared to stand with the oppressors. And when I say that, I mean when we have seen just over the last couple of weeks that both the PLP and the FNM is along with the oppressors of this country to keep the Bahamian people from being empowered. That is why I have never joined them in the last 22 years. Besides, the founding father of the nation, Sir Lyndon Pindling, said to me before he died, do not join the PLP because they failed to do what it is they intended. When he was the prime minister and he was the leader of the PLP, he says, do not join the PLP because they failed to accomplish what we intended to do as a nation. And the FNM is taking the nation in a further secular stance. So, Ms. McIntosh, stay doing what you're doing because it's the only way the country is going to go in the direction that we wanted it to happen. That's why I keep saying that. I am going along with the founder's intent, and I am not joining any of those parties that stands to oppress the Bahamian people. I will stand here long enough until people decide, let's do it the right way, what the founders intended. This agenda will either win on its merit in that regard, because we will not join the PLP nor the FNM.
Ms. McIntosh, I think what you said just now is classic. I would like to use that as commercial.
You have my right. You have your right to do so.
We still got the call on the line.
Go ahead, brother.
Go ahead.
Can I just ask two more questions?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm a little late. Is the
P.
BCP.
The Bahamas Constitution Party.
BCP.
BCP.
Are you going to run a candidate in every seat or every constituency?
Well, this is our third general election. In 2012, we ran 6 candidates. In 2017, we ran 18 candidates. So it appears that 39 seem to be the next number.
Okay, wonderful. One more question. Which constituency are you going to be running in?
That I'm between two, but I have to, based on COVID-19, we have to make some changes. But I ran in North Abaco the last time, but I will be running in Providence, possibly in Garden Hills.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful.
I will be running in Garden Hills. We are trying to select a candidate in North Andros based on the COVID situation, and people can't be moving as we need.
Carl, could I get your opinion on a question? Do you think it'll be a good idea for persons like Ali McIntosh, Cassie Stewart,
Yes.
persons who never made it to the House Assembly, who always stand for righteousness, who always stand with great ideas and how suggestions move this country forward, but you think that it's a good idea to have the Constitution amended, that persons who support other parties, that they have a opportunity to maybe be appointed to the Senate? You think that's a good idea?
Well, the names that you've called, sir, are talented people, people who are passionate about bringing this country to the next level.
Yes.
But the problem is, these people do not, and I'm sorry to say it, but Bahamian people don't know good candidates. You understand what I'm saying? They time and time again, people like Ali McIntosh would offer themselves to the country. But no, they're not interested in that. They're interested in other things, like other material things, how many contracts they can get. And they support the people who could give them contracts, and they see nation building as contract getting. But we have to climb much level above that. And we have to look to better this country for our children and our grandchildren. But what I would say is people like Placius Stewart, Ali McIntosh, Ms. Komalafe, they need to get together a think tank. And regardless of who wins this election, put the ideas forward and pump the ideas to the government. Although you might win the election, just don't slack off.
No, I think that's a good idea. I think that's a great idea. I really think that's a great idea.
Help the people who've gotten in there and keep the government feet
Foot
to the fire. And it's not until this happen in our country, we'll see some change.
Can I
I
give her
think
my
that's
number?
a great idea. I think that's a great idea.
Can I give her my number?
Caller,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McIntosh would like for you to take this number.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I would give it to any, so anyone who wanted to call me, 524-1798, 524-1798. That's my phone and WhatsApp, so you can call me in that regard. But what she is saying is a great idea, because what the BCP and the Bahamas Constitution Party is looking for, talented candidates. We can only run a country on talented, strong people with good, righteous principles, who's going to do the right thing, who's not going to steal, who is not going to cut corners, who is not going to fraud and scam the Bahamian people. And I'm saying this in this regard because the Bahamas Constitution Party is looking for candidates who's prepared to serve, who's prepared to offer themselves. And she is very right in the fact that the Bahamian people want, what do they want? They just want big campaign. Because see, the BCP has a campaign that's not glorious, but the idea and the ideals of what they are fighting for is right, because we are fighting for the next generation. We will not, or in fact, all of our candidates, we need our candidates to know we will take you on one regard. You're going to have to be prepared to take a pay cut. Because if the Bahamian people are suffering and they're taking a job cut, you're going to have to be taking a pay cut, because that's the first thing we're doing when we get in Parliament. We're cutting the salary of members of Parliament, because if the BCP can't turn this country around, then of course all of us will be in the same condition. So the candidate has to be prepared to take a pay cut. The first day in business is to cut the salaries of members of Parliament, the Prime Minister, every discretionary spending. When we turn this country around, then we could get back and get a good salary.
Scholar also stated that you joining up, that you and the DNA and Cassidy or the NDP, that you all join together and create a strong third-party force where all persons of goodwill and good mind and suggestions and ideas like you and Cassidy and Komalafi and all persons who feel that they don't want to be a part of the two main parties, that you all join force together. Create.
How do you think we should do that? Do you think we should have one car, or we should have all these multiple cars?
No, you could not have one car. You could have one building. You could have one agenda.
No, I'm talking about this. If we're going somewhere, we're gonna need a truck, a SUV, a car, a bus, or something. Yeah. So the Bahamas Constitution Party is like that. It's a bus. And it's the bus that is needed at this time. Look at what we're talking about now, constitutional rights. This is the time that the Constitution Party has the mandate to do what is necessary for the nation. That's why all of these talents get on this bus.
I promised to ask you
and we're going to get it
at the last conversation. I promised to ask you, did you think it was fair, right? And do you think it was fair in the last administration when they passed the law in Parliament that the Bahamian people will only get 12.5% on a sliding scale to 25%? About the oil, if oil is found and the oil exploration continues, that the Bahamian people will only get 12.5% to 25% on a sliding scale in the Bahamas, when no other country in the world has ever allowed the country only get 12.5%. Do you think that was an injustice done by the PLP to the Bahamian people in 2016.
Yes, of course, that's injustice because it's our things. It is our oil, and our oil should be to benefit the Bahamian people. So 25% is totally.
I think 25%, 12.5%.
12.5% to 25%
On a sliding
is a sliding scale, is actually iniquitous in that regard. So, but I believe because it is being said that members of the PLP or the leadership of the PLP has bought shares in this company, which means they have no moral authority to govern this nation because of the fact that because they are going to be benefiting, so they give the Bahamians 12% because they want to gain by the shares that they have in there. That right there excludes them from governing this nation. Every person in the PLP involved with that company and involved with shares in that company should never, ever sit in the halls of Parliament, because if you want business, you can't be a member of Parliament. And that was part of what the founding fathers intended, that you can't want your cake and eat it too. You can't be in government setting your business straight and then sit in the place and do
one
the
more
business.
question in reference to the oil from me. In 2005, 3 or 4 oil leases exploration was granted and signed by the former Governor General Sir R.D. Hano. And the Prime Minister at the time was former Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Perry Gladstone Christie, in 2005, when the first set of oil leases was signed, the exploration. And in 2007, the PLP lost the government, and the former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Hubert Alexander Ingram, became leader of the country. But when in 2005, the former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Perry Gladstone Christie, was the chief negotiator for the Bahamian people. He was, by him being the Prime Minister in 2005, he was the chief negotiator. In 2007, when he lost, he no longer was the chief negotiator. He now became a senior consultant to the law firm.
Treason.
What it is?
Treason.
It's treason?
Yeah, because he should never, ever grace the halls of government.
And when I said that, some PLP said that, oh, no, ain't nothing wrong with that, there's no conflict of interest. And I said, how could you be the chief negotiator for the Bahamian people when you're the leader, and then when you become opposition leader, you still holds the second highest post. You now become a senior consultant to the oil company against the Bahamian people.
Oh,
and they say, oh no, you that's that conflict of interest, and what's wrong with that? He's not the prime minister.
That's the reason why the Bahamas Constitution Party desired to go to constitutional democracy, which is the republic style of governance, for the point that many of the things that we call for, like an integrity commission, like independent ombudsman, consumer protection, and an independent electoral commission, for the purpose that people should not get to power without there be some level of litmus testing or creation criteria for national leadership. And when people cannot see that these things are wrong, there is a serious moral lack in the country. And so that's the problem now. The Bahamian people must want better for themselves. The Bahamas Constitution provides the framework, not only as a party, but as a government, to do what is right for the Bahamian people unto the next generation.
Okay, wow. Mr. McIntosh, I must say, very, very informative, man. I see we.
But you need to come back. We need why we live.
I'm telling you, man.
Request a return of Ms. McIntosh.
Well, one thing I didn't say is the Bahamas Constitution Party put oil as the bottom of anything we will explore. Mm-hmm. We're not interested in digging oil. Mm-hmm. We believe that the Ragonite, the alkaline mud that is in Andros, and the other 26 natural resources in the country, and I have a list, 26 natural resources, including alkaline, salt, and there's a copious of different things that are happening here in the country that we as a people do not know. We don't need to use the oil because the oil is there. That's what gives us the beauty of all the other marine life. So if we mess with the oil and mess with the environment, we're dead in the water. So we believe we don't even need to dig for oil. I believe we will stop it. If we can find a way, we'll stop the drilling for oil.
I always thought the oil keeps the earth lubricate, keep the earth lubricate.
Yeah, that's why it needs to stay where it is.
Prevents earthquake. I think as a result of the moving of the oil, I think that's why plenty places
slide over.
These bad earthquake. That was my mindset. I never had no statistics or no study.
Yeah, we won't go after oil. We won't go after oil. The other natural resources are good enough for us.
And you said your platform It's coming.
Mandate is the blueprint for governance of the nation. Mandate
January.
2022 January. It's going to be along with our candidates. We will launch the candidates and
At the same
mandate.
time, in
Yes,
January?
Yes.
So okay,
Somewhere before
can
the end of
can we book a date now that you will be coming after you have launched your candidates and your book? The first Thursday you'll be able to come back on the show and we can
I am
continue the
not
discussion.
sure. My calendar is
Okay.
vacillating.
Okay.
So
We paid
I
by
had
ear.
we paid by ear because I had
Okay.
several appointments tonight,
Go
but
ahead,
I
Judah.
choose to stay with the one
Yes,
I
ma'am.
made commitment.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyway,
But I
guys,
promise you, I will come back.
definitely. Anyway, guys, that's gonna do it for us, man. We gotta get on out of here. But as always, happy Thanksgiving to everybody who's locked in. Of course, our engineer extraordinaire behind the control. Appreciate you, and of course, to everybody who's listening in, our callers, I want to say again, thank you so much. But don't forget, we're going to be back next Thursday, same place, same time. That's my time. I'm Ivan Showtime. Thank you for your time. I'll see you next time.